Hi, everybody. I wanted to share my project with you today, which was to create the Raspberry Pi picture frame. When I first started doing this project, I looked at the instructions from the attachment in our syllabus, and I started with those instructions to download some of the software that they were suggesting to create the picture frame. However, just a few steps in, I got very lost with it, and I went back and tried to redo some things, and it just wasn't quite working right. So I went and I researched to try to find something that might be a little bit more manageable and easier to work with. And I found a great video on YouTube that explained how to set up your Raspberry Pi picture frame. So I want to share with you some of the steps that I used from that video. The first thing that I had to do was I had to install a slideshow software with the sudo apt-get install line. And the first one I installed was FEH or FEH, and that's actually the slideshow software. And then the second app that I had to install was called Samba. After I installed both of those, I had to create a directory for the photos. So I made a directory, and my directory was called home/pi/frame/photos. And then I went into the directory with the command cd frame, and I needed to create an executable file for my photos. After I did that, I had to add code to Samba for the photos, and the code was directly in the YouTube description at the bottom, so I could just copy and paste and add that code right into Samba, and then I had to restart the program. I did run into some difficulties when I tried to restart Samba. It was saying that the program was masked, and I spent quite a bit of time trying to research and figure out ways to unmask the program so that I could reboot it. And it seemed to be quite a common problem because I saw a lot of threads where people were mentioning their same issues, and a lot of the suggestions that people had put on there for doing, none of them were working. And I noticed from the comments that they weren't working for others as well. So I stopped working with Samba for a while, and I went on to the rest of the instructions. And the next step was to share files from your PC. So you could add pictures into the file on your PC, and it would share directly with the Raspberry. So I had to give write permission for my directory file, and then I had to add photos to the file on my PC. Finally, I had to install something called X Screensaver and go into the X Screensaver and change the settings so that the Pi wouldn't automatically stop playing the slideshow and power down. So let me show you exactly what that looks like. When I went into my Pi, once you download the software for the screensaver and you go up to your menu options, if you go to preferences, it will then appear right down at the bottom as screensaver. When you have the screensaver, it is automatically set to this random screensaver, and you need to change it to disable screensaver. So I did that and exited out. Then what I did was I went over to my PC, and on the PC side, I had to find the Raspberry Pi folder that I had created on my Pi. And so I went into the network and I did 2// Raspberry Pi, and it came up with this. And here is the photos folder that I had created. The only issue I saw with this that was different than the video was that below my photos, it doesn't say shared. I had added some photos to it, and the final step was supposed to be to reboot my Raspberry Pi, and then the slideshow would start automatically. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So I had to troubleshoot, and I researched different ways to make it work. But finally, I went and I found a website. It was called the Easy Raspberry Pi Base Screensaver Slideshow. And after reading through, it went through all the instructions on what you would need, how to set up your Pi, which is all the stuff that we've already had done, connecting and powering on. And then finally, it talked about the installing the FEH program, which I had already done. And I had done several of these steps already. So it kind of followed the same line as the YouTube video did. However, it doesn't mention Samba. It kind of skips Samba and goes directly to this installing the screensaver and disabling it. And then finally, it gave me this code to put into the terminal. So I took this and I inputted it into the terminal, and I'll show you what that looks like. When I go here, I've already typed it into the terminal, and if it is the last thing that I've already done, I do not have to redo it. I can just press the up arrow and it will automatically copy it for me again, so I don't have to continuously type out this long code into the terminal. And then I press enter and it automatically starts my slideshow, and every few seconds it'll change the pictures and continue going until I hit the Q button, and then it will quit and take me back. It's being a little slow, but it'll take me back to my Raspberry Pi. The resources that I use was mostly this video right here, which I'll show you. It's called Raspberry Pi Digital Picture Frame, and it was the second part 2. The first part mainly talked about setting up the actual Raspberry Pi, getting it all hooked up, and then this part talked more about the applications that you needed to install in order to make it work. And then after troubleshooting and finding out some different things that didn't work, it was this website right here, which gave me the code that I actually needed to make the slideshow work. So this was from instructables.com, and this was the Easy Raspberry Pi based screensaver slideshow. So that is my project. Then I haven't yet, but my next step would be to connect it to something a little bit smaller. I tried to connect it to my iPad, but I did not have a cord that would plug in from my iPad to the Raspberry Pi, because my iPad doesn't have the HDMI outlet. So I would have to figure out a way to convert it to something smaller so I could actually hang it on the wall. Until then, it is hooked up to my TV and is giving a slideshow on my TV, which is kind of cool. So that is my project. Thank you.